Hey everybody, welcome to the launch party for Delivering Generations. I always point the wrong way. I'm McGee Matthews, and we're here today to talk about the third book in the Ladies of Diamond Lake series, Delivering Generations. I am getting a weird background buzz on my headphones, so I really hope that all of y'all are not listening to this hot mess in my headphones. I may yet have to take them off. Let's see. I guess the thing I should start with is just mentioning that if you leave comments or you share today, or we're going to have some trivia questions. If you answer some of those, I'm going to be giving out Amazon cards so that you can buy some stuff on Amazon. And I'm hoping that some of you will also share and comment, and whoever does the most of that will get your choice of an ebook or a signed copy. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the conversion software I used to take my book into a Mobi you can use on yours, so that's been a little bit iffy. So it may take me a hot minute for that, but the paperback is live, so I can order that for y'all as well. Today our theme is ghosts. One of the characters in the book, that's her hobby, is paranormal, and just to start us off a little bit, my own ghost stories would be very lengthy, so we won't sit through all that, but I do want to share one. If y'all got the Campfire book that had the different stories that people have written to support the Trevor Project, one of the things talked about the ghosts that we had seen, and I had my oldest son with me in Charleston. They were in the third grade, and they did a ghost walk with the kids. Whether that was smart or not, I don't know. But the group we ended up with was like 10 dads, me, and all these little boys. So the dads are nice. I mean, it was cool. It was fine. So we were just kind of chitting along, and the kids were, all herded up at the beginning. And I can see my son right by the storyteller, and he's peppering her with questions. Oh my gosh, what is he saying to that woman? I have no idea what he's saying. So all of a sudden, he throws his hands up in the air and goes, "Stop! She's a total fraud. She's never even seen a ghost in her life." And he turns around and he points at me, "But my mom sees them all the time." So naturally, now I have 10 little boys walking around me like a little chicken with all of her little hen, the hen with all her little chicks. And everywhere I look, they'd all look with me. And I didn't see a darn thing till we got to the cemetery, and there was kind of a little shadow around a tree, and I looked twice, and I didn't see it anymore. And the little boy next to me says, "I saw it. Did you see it?" I said, "Yeah." And all the other boys are like, "Oh man, I must have blinked at the wrong time." So that just cracked me up for what that's worth. That's my first ghost story. So I'm glad to see everybody popping in today. I appreciate y'all. I got some local folks. Debbie's hanging out with me. Got folks all over the country. Got some from Germany. Love that. So we're having a big old time here. So I appreciate you telling me that the sound is working okay, because like I said, I'm just getting nothing at these headphones. It's a hot mess. So anyways, I appreciate y'all taking time to pop in. So I'm going to start off with a little video that I recorded with a friend of mine with her ghost stories. They're really interesting ones we're going to share today, so I hope that you enjoy that. And this one is a lot of fun. Tell me, what are your ghost stories, Kara?
Well, I have a few. My poltergeist seems to follow me. He's even followed me to work at school. I work in a school, and I would be working with a student. I'm a speech therapist, and the student sits in front of me, and so we're face to face. There's a bulletin board, if you can picture this, up against the wall. So it's my little desk pushed up against that bulletin board, and the child and I are face to face. Now, of course, as a teacher, I decorate the bulletin board, I staple everything in securely. I will be working with my student, and one of the items off the bulletin board will fly off, staple and all. It will fall right on the desk, and my student and I will look at each other and we'll go, "Huh," and the student will be like, "Oh my, Miss Salento, it fell off. Did you see that?" And I say, "Of course I saw it. It's right in front of me," you know. But in order to make it so that my student isn't like alarmed, I would say, "Oh, It was just a really faulty staple, you know. But things got even more like intense. So I would be sitting and working with a child at another time, and a book would come right off the shelf. And I would say the same thing. Oh, I must have put it someplace and it just fell off.
Now, what did you tell the kids? It's okay, my room is really not haunted, or did they ever put that together? Or
Oh yeah, I've had kids joke with me. I've had, they don't obviously don't believe it per se. They do put it together in you know, in when it's really, really, glaring, like, the book. I still remember it was the Book of Mice and Men. It just came right out, fell onto the floor. And I just kind of ignore it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I know. I know.
So that's our video one. Our first trivia question related to that is going to be in the movie Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. What did Sam do to convince Whoopi Goldberg's character Oda Mae Brown to help him connect with Molly? So if you know the answer to that, type that up in the comment section and we'll enter you for a prize for that. And while you're busting around thinking about what that might be, I'm going to go ahead and read my first section from the story. It is the character Jackie, who you can see up. I always point the wrong way. You can see up there, and I'll share a little bit about that with you. The bright morning sun filtered into speckled patches under the huge oak trees in the Diamond Lake Cemetery. Her camera around her neck, Jackie inspected the grids on the rough map she'd penciled and started at the large stone that said Smith. She turned on the tape recorder and dropped it in her shirt pocket. It was unlikely she'd pick up any discernible spirit-related noises, especially vocalizations, but it was the holy grail for ghost hunters. Holding up her small thermometer, she waited until the mercury stopped shifting. She walked carefully, making notes as she moved along. Near a huge bush, old stones leaned with moss covering most of the surface. Jackie pulled out a bottle of distilled ammonia water and spritz before she moved on. "Good morning. Any luck?" A white-haired man stooped with age approached, his worn cotton pants carefully ironed into creases and his wool sweater the same pattern her grandmother had knitted for years. "Hey, Virgil." The caretaker for the cemetery had been quite interested in her observations. "So far, no audible or visual indicators, but there's been a 10-degree drop by that lamb statue." He nodded. "I've wondered whether it's the child or a parent that visits that spot." Jackie opened her notebook and scribbled. "What have you seen there?" "Oh, today it's just a feeling that someone is there. Once I saw a small cloud. I can't really describe it." He waved his arm. "They're all different times. Most people start looking in the fall. Kids like to sneak in at Halloween, so I don't even bother to lock the gate when I leave. That seems odd." "Well, most people think things only go bump in the night." He smiled. "We know better." "It's just quieter, I suppose. Ghosts are all over, not just old buildings." Virgil nodded. "Same, but you do frequent this area often." "More emotional energy." She scribbled in her notes and then crossed off a section on her map. "Care to join me for lunch?" Jackie nodded. "I brought sandwich cookies." He grinned. "My favorite." After they ate, she returned to her camera, carefully shooting from every angle before moving on. She hadn't caught any images in years. One time with her grandfather in the St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans, she'd been taking shots of the statues. After having the film developed, there was an unexplained image they hadn't noticed while they walked. Misty white, it seemed like someone peeking around a pew, like a child playing hide and seek. That was enough to spark a lifelong hobby searching for ghosts. The darn Ghostbusters movie increased the ridicule for her pastime. Every place she visited, she'd ask the locals about town stories. Usually some spot was indicated, and off she'd go, even if it was mostly like watching paint dry as she sat and waited in old buildings. She preferred this mapping to sitting, and once she got all the pictures back, who could say what might be there? Jackie wasn't sure why, but she had a strong feeling something would show up. She glanced at the thermometer and watched as the mercury shifted. She made another notation and took a few steps. Goosebumps. She clicked off several shots, then had to change the film roll. It was getting harder and harder and harder to find the black and white film she preferred, and now she was forced to mail off the rolls to Seattle for developing. Studying the area around her, she saw nothing and moved again. Another hour, she packed her equipment and packed the containers in her car. The tape recorder had stopped. The new batteries once again suddenly drained of their energy. She wouldn't know what was on the tape until she listened. Stepping carefully around the headstones, some leaned precariously, she entered the small office building. I'm headed out, another day, another fine visit. Virgil's eyes sparkled. Anything promising? Quite a few temperature drops, and I shot a roll of film. Just a hunch. Maybe I should just take up knitting. At least I'd have a nice sweater. I thought you'd be good at whatever you set your mind to, but I bet your ghost hunting, you're gonna get something. I can just tell. Well, I appreciate your confidence in me. I have a good feeling about today's pictures. I'll let you know. I look forward to that. Good day. In the sunlight, she spotted a shadowy image. Those jerks know when my gear is put away. Dang it. She waved that direction and got into her car. Okay, so that's our first little section about Jackie. And I have a second trivia question I'm going to ask now just because it kind of fits in here. I managed to get rid of the echo so I don't hear six of me, so that's probably good. Our second trivia question, I did see the right answer pop up on the side. I keep peeking over there, shame on me. Our second question, in the same movie Ghost, what did Sam do to convince Molly that it was really him? So if you pop that in there, if you remember, he was trying to convince her and she just didn't believe that Oda Mae had him with her, and he did this thing to show her that. So you can pop that in and we will see who knows the answer to that one. The next little bit that we're going to see is really interesting because it has a dog involved in this ghost story.
And I have a dog that's sensitive. And the dog kind of alerts me before the happenings start, within the home. He will stare up the ceiling, he'll bark at the walls, he'll run into the bathroom, and he'll go behind the toilet and bark. There's nothing there, and it's hard to break him from it. So recently, the dog was running into the bathroom. I would say this is about a month ago. The dog was running into the bathroom. He was barking. And my wife, later on that day, went into the bathroom and she was getting ready for work. On my wall, I have shelves with all sorts of knickknacks. The knickknacks came flying, some of the knickknacks came flying off the wall. My dog is barking like a maniac. And all my wife does was lean out of the bathroom and I was like, yeah, he's back. Then later on, I would say a couple more days later, my dog starts jumping at the wall in my hallway. And he's jumping up and he's jumping up and he's barking and he's barking. And then he's looking to the left. And then he's jumping up and he's barking and he's barking and he's looking to the left. And I'm thinking, it's in the corner. It's got to be in the corner. So I ignore him because I know what this means. And I would say about 2 days later, where the dog was seeking and jumping at, one of the family portraits came flying off the wall. Nail was still in the wall, but it shattered all over the floor. So my son has the room right next to where it came off, and he opens the door and he goes, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, the picture fell off the wall." And I'm just trying to, smooth it over. But he says to me, "Mom, do you have the heat on? It's really cold in my room." So whatever was there, he was sensing it literally right next door, with the dog confirming that it was already there. Started with lights flickering on and off, and the dog, just running around the house barking. But now it's amping up, and they say that the poltergeist comes from internalized turmoil, that our energy, causes some unrest, and it manifests into this energy. And I couldn't think of a better a better year than 2020 for that to happen.
There's a list on a website of things to look for a real story versus you know, a dream thing or something that
Uh-huh.
somebody has convinced themselves is true. And so, of course, two of the key things are animals, seeing them, and temperature drops, and children, because they tend to, even though they have fantastic imaginations, there's still certain things that they don't um,
Filter out.
filter out. Yeah, that's a
Hmm.
great way to put it.
All right, I think you'll agree that dog is pretty awesome. I don't know the dog's name. I don't know if Kara's able to be live with us to type it in the box there, but I didn't ask, and I'm embarrassed about that now. So, anyways, it's great to see all of you out here today. I've been trying to put little likes and comments. I finally figured out that I needed a second monitor so I could see everything that was going on. So I'm like a little kid with my eyes flicking all over the place. So I hope I can be focused enough to get through this next reading. So we're talking about the book Delivering Generations today. This character you see over my shoulder, wrong again, is going to become the interest of Jackie that we just talked about a minute ago. So this is another little reading from the book. The next morning, Angie skipped up the stairs 2 at a time. She grabbed a Coke from the fridge and sucked it down in 3 big gulps. With a hearty burp, she tossed the can to the recycle bin and banged out the back door. She hopped onto her 10-speed bicycle and popped through the gears as she rolled down the driveway. At the street, she waved around a slow car and pumped her legs, her head low over the handlebars. Angie skidded through the front door of the main thing at exactly 5 after 10. Gasping, she said, "Good morning, Winnie." Winnie took off her reading glasses. "It is. Glad you're able to enjoy it. You caught a break as the first appointment canceled, but there's a walk-in." Angie followed Winnie's gaze to the waiting area. "I'll get right to it." Hurrying to her station, she wondered if Winnie was upset with her. She tucked her fanny pack into the closet and pulled out an apron and whipped the ties around her waist. She plastered a smile on her face and approached the waiting area. "Hi, can I help you?" A woman put down the style book she was holding and stood. "I hope so, just a trim." Angie found herself staring up into the face of a serious woman with deep brown eyes so dark they were almost black. She really didn't need a haircut at all. If anything, it was almost too short already. Leading her to the wash station, she waved a hand for her to sit down. "I'm Angie." "Jackie." She leaned back, closing her eyes as Angie sprayed her hair. Once wet, Angie discovered the coarse, curly hair had a mind of its own. No wonder she tried to keep it reined in. With a blob of shampoo, she massaged the foam into the hair, paying especial attention to over the ears. Most people skip that spot with a quick run through, and it felt so good to be stroked there. After a rinse with a sprayer, Angie flicked out a towel and patted Jackie's head. Jackie took the towel, their hands barely touching. Yet Angie had an odd response. Her fingers tingled. "What does that mean?" Walking to her booth, she asked, "You new in town?" "Not really. I work at the police station. I've been moving my way around to try and find the best place to get a haircut, and main thing won." Jackie sat back in the chair. Adjusting the cape around Jackie's neck, Angie said, "My Aunt Winnie will be glad to hear that." She ran a comb through the hair. "Just the trim? What about longer here, maybe shorter over here?" Jackie shook her head. "Maybe next time. I'm just trying to blend in, not look like a runway model." She stared at Angie's hair, currently blue-tipped, in the mirror. Or a singer in a rock band. Angie winked out of habit, instantly sensing that was a mistake. "As a matter of fact, I do play guitar." She started with the scissors, quickly taming the few wayward strands of hair. "Close your eyes." Jackie obeyed the command. Angie snipped across her forehead. "Okay, you can open them." "I'd like to hear you play sometime if it's not too seedy of a place." Angie flicked her gaze to the mirror and the sparkle in Jackie's eyes. "Oh, I specialize in seedy places." She laughed. After unsnapping the cape, she used a brush dipped in powder to dust around Jackie's neck. Shaking the fabric forward, she realized she'd been flirting. "So what? It helps with tips." As if to prove her point, Jackie tucked a bill into the jar and went to the desk to pay Winnie. Angie chased around the short hairs on the floor, scooping them into a dustbin. Absently, she watched in the mirror as Jackie left out the front door. Winnie came up behind her. Your next appointment is in 10 minutes. She's always late, like someone else I know. Angie answered slowly. Late, like me. What's going on with you? Winnie peered at Angie, then back to the front door. Huh. Well, Nancy, will say that I'm a bad influence, but I'm blaming her. Bad influence? Never mind. Just try to get her on time a few times a week, eh? For Pete's sake. Angie furrowed her brow. Winnie could be an odd duck. It must be a Minnesota thing. Okay, that's our end of our little reading there, and a little shout out to my friend who knows who she is in Michigan. That is my inspiration for the character Winnie, who's a hairdresser. Her name is not Winnie, just to say. All right. The next ghost story that we have is another friend of mine. I was really glad that she was willing to talk about this because she's really got some neat stuff in here. So hang on for my friend Kim.
When I was younger, like probably 10 to 12 years old, Mom and I and my aunt decided to go visit my cousin who lived a little distance away. And the house that she lived in was an old railroad way station. So it was a huge house, big old house. It had a big porch along the side, and they had put in a mudroom where the people used to get off the trains and come into the house to spend the night, and then they'd catch the train the next day to wherever they were going. She took us on a little tour, and we went out along the side of the house and walked where the tracks used to be, and you could see where the cinder was still in the ground from where they had the rails and the old ties. I actually found an old railroad spike, and I kept it because of what happened that day. She showed us the sitting room, and she had an old rocker in there, and she said this is where the ghost stories started, that she'd be sitting in the sitting room crocheting or knitting or whatever she was doing, and the old wooden rocking chair would just start to rock, like somebody was actually sitting in it, rocking back and forth. And I'm starting to get goosebumps again, because whenever I tell this story, I get goosebumps. She took us to the door. The older homes back then had doors at the bottom of the stairway so that when you went up at night in the winter or whatever, you could close the door and keep the heat. So we started to go up the steps, and she goes, oh yeah, I almost forgot. I got to tell you about this one. I've got a poltergeist who likes to play tricks on me. And when I try to go upstairs and I go to open the door, it will pull the door closed and hold the door, so she couldn't get it open. So she said, I would just step back and say, okay, you win, and the door will swing open. So we were sitting at the table, and the table was next to the wall that connected to the mudroom. And right on the other side of that wall was a little flight of steps that went down into the root cellar. And we were sitting there just laughing and having a good old time. And next thing you know, you hear footsteps come inside the door, the mudroom screen door opened and closed, and then you heard the footsteps go down into the root cellar, down the steps. And she said, he comes every night and just goes down there, and I don't know why he's here. He goes down in the root cellar. So being kind of curious about it, I looked at her and said, well, let's go down and see. So she got a flashlight, and we went down the steps, and she looked around. There was nobody down there. There were no footprints in the gravel where anybody had walked. And needless to say, I kind of ran back up the steps because I realized that we had just heard a ghost. You can read about the way station in one of the Haunted Ohio books. I know that a lot of ghost stories are made up, but this one wasn't made up. And I actually have the goosebumps to prove it, because I'm sitting here. Like I said, every time I tell the story, I still get the shakes and I get the goosebumps. So that's my ghost story.
That was a cool one, don't you think? I love the spike that she still has. That's pretty nifty. I think you'll remember these characters from book one, Amy and Molly, and they're up to more hijinks in book three. As you may remember from book two, Molly's pregnant, so that kind of has a big part of the book, but there's, of course, some police things going on. So I want to read a little section with that. I'm a little nervous, to tell you the truth, because Heidi is watching, who does my audiobook so far. She does an awesome job. So she's already agreed to start this book. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So we're going to go ahead and read a little section. I have another trivia question and some more ghost stories. Curled up on the couch, Molly held a notebook and an Eastern Michigan pencil. Meow watched from the cat tower while Cheeto napped in a pool of sunshine on the carpet. As she doodled on the paper, an idea came to her, and she called over to Amy. "Did you ever tell me about your grandfather working on cars for the Rum Runners?" "Rum Runners? He didn't do anything like that," Amy insisted as she folded the corner of the page in the parts manual. Molly started to sketch another image on the side of the paper, considering her words. "I thought you said that he modified cars." Amy got up from the kitchen table. "Well, sure, but rum runners is what they called the guys that drove the boats across the river. You mean bootleggers. They drove the booze to the customers in Chicago or wherever. Why?" "Just a funny thing I saw in a file." Molly sat upright, Meow sneaking onto the warm cushion next to her. Dang, Amy could be infuriatingly precise. "And wrong. They did call the drivers runners, too. It wasn't important." She covered her mouth, but the rumble in her stomach settled. "It seems that the police stopped a modified car and arrested some people, but they never got the charges to stick." "Well, it's not illegal to soup up a car." Amy got up and went to the fridge. She handed Molly a ginger ale and sat back down. Molly popped the snap ring. "No, it's not. It is illegal to deliver contraband. I'm not saying that your grandfather did. Well, shoot, I wouldn't care if he did. It's kind of an exciting family story, don't you think?" Molly didn't answer. Amy added, "You might ask my dad. He worked with Grandpa in the garage since he was little. Maybe he saw something." The next afternoon, Molly knocked on the Gilbert front door and yelled, "Anybody home? It's me, Molly." Frank came to the screen door. "Well, don't just stand out there with my grandchild, baking in the heat. Come on in." Molly followed him past the living room to the den. The entire wall was covered with family photos in a mishmash of frames, some images in color, some in black and white. He asked, "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Business, actually. Did you see any of the men that your dad did special projects for?" "Special projects? You mean like race cars?" "Well, like cars to race from the cops delivering booze during Prohibition." "Shoot, Molly, I was pretty little when Dad started the garage. I don't even remember it not being open. He always tinkered with racing cars, as far as I know. It's possible." "Even probable?" Frank smiled. "I would say yes. But you wouldn't remember who the car owners would have been." "Well, not from the early days, but guys still delivered moonshine even after booze was legal again. A buck is a buck." Molly grit her teeth. He wasn't exactly evasive, but he was going to make her drag out every little detail. Amy was just like her father. "So, theoretically, if they hung out with your dad and the racing cars, they might have had a modification for delivering liquor." "Well, yeah. Let me think on it a while. I'll see if I can find some old pictures that might jar my memory." He pointed to a faded color photo with a ribbon hanging from the frame. "That's me at my first win. Dad's taking the picture. That's Terry Wilson, your uncle's younger brother. We were thick as thieves back in the day. Well, so to speak, of course." "Did you know my parents?" "Not too well. They were younger than me. By the time I got out of the army and moved home, a lot of people had moved on for jobs in the big city. Your folks among them. I'll see if I can find any old photos in the files." Molly waited 2 beats before asking, "How's Rosie really doing with this baby stuff?" Frank grinned. "I think better than anybody expected." "Well, I'm glad too, but I'm a little surprised. I mean, she and Amy didn't used to get along so well." Molly absently twisted her ring. "Well, this won't make any sense until you hold that little bundle, but all of a sudden you forget everything about yourself, and your job becomes protecting those little ones." He picked at a fingernail. "Just when we thought we were getting close to emptying some of the birds out of the nest, her brother—" Molly looked down. After a few moments, she said he drowned. Frank cleared his throat. "Yes, that changes you to lose a child. It shook us all, but Rosie kind of got stuck in what could have been, weddings and all that kind of stuff. Amy wasn't going down that road. She was out all hours, racing cars, drinking too much. The more we tried to rein her in, the harder she pulled away. The lesbian thing about put Rosie over the edge. Molly shifted but stayed quiet. Frank said, I couldn't believe you were actually going out with our little delinquent. Rosie didn't care to have you remind her about the whole gay thing, but then Amy went missing. When we found she was out at the lake, Rosie was hysterical. She was going to lose another child. That fear made her realize how much she loved Amy just as she is. Molly wiped at her eyes. Damn these hormones. She mumbled, I hope I don't have to die to get my mom to come around. Frank awkwardly hugged her. You won't. He pulled away. I'm not saying that Rosie understands Amy and they won't still fight, but I will say one thing. You bring out the best in Amy, and we both notice. Molly felt the catch in her throat. Thanks, Frank. She touched her belly as the baby twitched. At least the baby would have one set of grandparents. So, if you have read any of the stories, I did a little interview with a gal that was recently posted, and one of the questions she asked about the inspiration for the book. This book actually ties in with the book that I wrote about the Civil War called Keeping Secrets. Family history is my hobby, or obsession, as my wife would say. So I made a family tree that goes all the way from Molly all the way back to my characters in that book. So in my mind, I have different stories that may get written in the future. So one of the things about that is how those histories fold together. So I put a little clip together that talks about how that worked. Living in the South, it just seems to all work together for me. Intending to reduce crime and improve both family life and employee productivity, Michigan's prohibition went into effect on May 1st, 1917. Almost immediately, alcohol was brought in from Toledo. The fines for smuggling were small compared to the potential profits. In 1919, the supply from Ohio dried up when that state passed prohibition laws as well. Bootleggers turned to Canada. Smugglers began trafficking bootleg liquor across the Canadian border into Michigan via the Detroit River, Lake St. Clair, and other waterways between Michigan and Ontario. This area became known as the Windsor-Detroit Funnel. When the rivers and lakes froze in the winter, smugglers simply drove across them or skated across the ice, dragging sleds full of whiskey behind them. By the time of the national prohibition on January 1920, the residents of Michigan and Ontario were accomplished in bootlegging and perfected their trade during the next 13 years. 75% of all the alcohol smuggled into the United States during Prohibition crossed the border at the Windsor-Detroit Funnel. By 1929, rum running was Detroit's second largest industry, netting $215 million a year. In 1928, the Detroit News estimated that there were between 16,000 and 25,000 speakeasies operating in the Detroit area alone. Even before Prohibition, there were distillers throughout the rural areas of the South brewing up homemade spirits. Made under the light of the moon so no one would see the smoke rising from the stills, this practice gave the booze the name moonshine. Prohibition created a huge black market for secretly distilled liquor. Every brewer needed to use runners, drivers, and ordinary-looking cars who could smuggle moonshine from the stills to the customers across the region. On the outside, the cars looked stock to avoid attention, but inside the vehicles were outfitted with heavy-duty shocks and springs, safeguarding the jars from breaking on bumpy mountain roads. The seats in the back were often removed for storage. High-powered engines gave the cars extra speed to outrun any cops and tax agents they might encounter along the route. Speeding along curvy mountain roads, they coined maneuvers like the bootleg turn, in which drivers could quickly turn the car in a controlled skid. Racing these high-performance cars was a popular pastime in the South. They raced on weekend afternoons out in the country on makeshift dirt tracks. One of these runners, Big Bill France, held a meeting with other drivers and car owners to establish rules for the race. Thus, NASCAR, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, was born. The first official race was held in 1948. Well, I just love history. I have to say with irony, because in school I loathed history. It was my least favorite class. Maybe because the teacher was always a coach, and he made us read paragraph after paragraph going around the room, and you waited till the kid behind you kicked you in the seat so you could find out where they were before it was your turn to read. But I guess my family history hobby's kind of gone into the history. Annette has asked which character. I have the tree drawn so that they are descended from Jeremy Hepscott. Although I have some other family in there that I won't go into all of that. I realize I had forgotten to ask a trivia question before my clip. So going back to the original Ghostbusters movie, what was the largest ghost walking the streets near the final shootout? So this is the original one, so I'll let you think about that for a hot minute, and we're looking for what the ghost was that walked down the street. They were trying to block, don't think of anything, and he thought of something. So we'll see if you can remember what that was. I have one more little ghost clip I think you're going to really enjoy. I want to squeeze in one more little trivia question, though. What is the main ingredient in moonshine? So I'll let you think on that one for just a moment while we listen to my friend Brenda talk about her ghost.
When talking about ghosts, as a little kid, I remember we went to go visit a place that was outside of what used to be called Friendship Airport, which should tell you how old I'm in. It's actually a BWI in Maryland. And that old house, if you laid on the floor in the living room and put your ear to the wood, and I remember I was like 8 years old, you could actually hear like people in the basement, like just that low murmur of like because it was an old enough, old style house where there was like a kitchen servants area in the basement, and the stuff would come up in the dumbwaiters and that kind of thing. So that was very cool, kind of stuff. The house I live in now in Ohio was built in 1925. And I don't know a ton about the house, but my first experience that I had in the house was laying around reading a book in an afternoon, and out of the corner of my eye, I catch movement, and I just kind of like shifted over because I was in the house alone and the dog was sleeping next to me. So like I knew exactly where the dog was and exactly where I was. So I wasn't expecting anyone else in the house. And what I see is like this little girl, like in a little like pinafore kind of dress, kind of hiding behind the armchair in my living room. And of course when I turn around fully to like check it out, I don't see anything. And I'm like, okay, so this is kind of weird. And I always just catch her the periphery. Happens 3 or 4 other times. And I don't really say anything to it until my wife says to me one day, she goes, so, do you ever like see things in the house? And I'm like, what things? She's like, do you ever see like the little girl? I said, okay, good. It's not just me. So that's one thing, right? So I'm thinking, what are the odds of us both slipping a groove here? Yeah, no. Okay, so we see that. So time goes by, and when I'm busier, I don't see her. But one of the things that really woke me up one night, I woke up because I'm thinking I see something in the bedroom, and of course I'm getting ready to like attack whatever it is. And then what I see is kind of like a guy dressed in like old style Amish sort of clothes, just looking out the window. And I'm getting feelings of aggression, and I was really tired at the time because our kids were like babies. I was like not sleeping at all. And I reach over to see like, yep, it's not my wife. She's not seen it at the window. And then I'm just like so tired, and I'm like, okay, I'm dreaming or whatever. And I just go back to sleep. And it happens a couple more times, and I just attribute it to I'm dreaming because I'm so tired. I'm in that really heavy duty REM sleep. So time goes on, we have our kids. They get to be like 3 or 4 years old. And they were always hesitant to go upstairs by themselves. And they're twins, so they're used to doing everything together. I'm like, good Lord, by the time they get to be 5, and they're just refusing to go upstairs by themselves. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? I mean, come on, it's why? I mean, it's our house. No one else is here. Why are you so afraid to go upstairs by yourselves? And my daughter says, I really hate that guy that stands at the top of the stairs. And I was like, oh man. Right? I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah, we'll go upstairs together. That's fine. So that's my ghost story for my house. And I'm like, tell the kids all the time, go turn all the lights on, go upstairs together. No, you don't have to go by yourself. It's that creepy. Mansfield Reformatory is pretty close to where I lived. It's where they shot Shawshank Redemption. And you can actually go on ghost hunts in that facility. And they lock you in at night, and you can't, if you come out, you're out. You can't go back and forth to your car and stuff like that. And I have a couple of friends that write horror, and they have wanted to do it too. So I think we're all gonna go have some ghost hunting experience down at the jail.
And of another piece of trivia, it turns out one of my kids lives like half hour from Brenda. So I think we'll have to go up there and check out that location together. Although I have to say I'm a big wuss. So we'll see how that goes. I am so glad for all of your time today. I'm going to go through and make sure everybody gets the information about who the winners were for our contest. We've got audiobooks, if that's what you'd prefer, coming out soon, a couple of months, but you'd have to wait on that one. Otherwise, you have to get an ebook or paperback book. Happy to send either of those. And I've got Amazon cards. So depending on where you are, I'll have to figure out how I get you the codes for those. So I'm pretty excited about all my friends that took time out of their lives to do a little video with me to share with y'all today. The ghost stories were just super fun. Just as a sidebar, I forgot to give the answers last time I did a video launch, so I apologize for that. So today, in the movie Ghost, Demi Moore, Patrick Swayze, the way Sam got Whoopi Goldberg's character to work with him is he sang Henry VIII, I am, until she finally lost her mind and said, okay, I'll do it, whatever you say to stop singing. And in the second question, what did Molly do to convince, what did Sam do to convince Molly? He pushed that penny up the door, and she saw that and knew that it was him. In the original Ghostbusters movie, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, a lot of you got that, so that was great. So you remember that one. Main ingredient in moonshine is typically corn. It can be mash, it can be cracked corn, it can be different. Pretty much they can make it with anything they can get their hands on. So interestingly, though, to be called bourbon, it has to have at least 51% corn mash, and it has to be stored in a charred new oak barrel when it's cured. So I hope that you'll get a chance to read the book, give me some feedback, post something, in the comments if you liked it, on Amazon. We always appreciate those. And it was great to see all of you coming out today. I will edit it up a little bit, tighten out the front clip, and post it online this afternoon. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your life to come see what's going on, and I'll see you online. Thank you.